Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me? This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me? This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me? This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me?
With your host, Brandon Tierney. In 3, 2, 1.
Good everybody, BT Unleashed in the house. All right, so before we jump into the show, we've made a little progress here. You can now see the logo because what I did was, and of course, right before I started the show, I got to lean down and grab something here. Your boy had to go old school, and because the lighting things are not here yet, I basically had to create these things and hang them from the wall to obscure some of the light. One just fell. At least you can now see the logo perfectly, and then obviously listen, I told you work in progress, man. Click by click, brick by brick, and literally ask J-Rod, like 20 seconds before we came on, dink, it drops from the ceiling. So we're getting there. Obviously, there's still a little shine, a little gloss, whatever. We'll take care of that. Let's jump into the show. Hopefully, everybody had an outstanding weekend. You know, listen, I want to start with the NBA here. I want to get into something John Harbaugh said with Mike Francesa and some other places as well. We've got BT's 3 burning questions brought to you by Sullivan-Papain. Got a little Johnny's Providence, the brawl. We'll get to it all. Get the text coming. Fire them in. Let's have a little fun. Kiddos, probably most of the kids are home from school today, I would imagine. Right? And speaking of kids, I got to give a shout out to mine. How about this? We've got the first official BT merchandise. Now, the store's not open. This is just for Daddy. And my son made this. You know what he made this on? And this is so Santa brought. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't from Santa. It was from Grammy and Papa. I guess it's a new thing, somewhat new, and it's a 3D printer. And I remember when I heard the concept of a 3D printer. J-Rod, do you know about this stuff? Do you know about the 3D?
Yeah, big time.
You do. So you're in. Do you have one?
I don't have one personally. I was actually like speaking with my roommate about potentially looking into it, but it's something a lot of like kids are, which is funny. Like a lot of like, you know, younger preteen age kind of kids, they're like super into like the 3D printing thing now. Like they'll just get the little plastic, like that's what they'll get, and they'll just make as many like toys as they want.
It's wild, dude. It's got like, it almost looks like an octopus with all these different arms and wires and contraptions. You get different colors, you make different stuff. So when I first heard about the concept of a 3D printer, I'm saying, and my wife was saying, oh, you can make anything. You can make wiffle balls. And in my mind, I'm like, printer. So I'm thinking it's going to be like a pliable paper wiffle ball.
Yeah.
I mean, why would I associate any other printer with anything but paper? And then Grammy and Papa got it for Christmas, and he's cranking out handcuffs. He's making hard wiffle balls. He's making this stuff. So I'm sure. Yeah.
That mug was 3D printed?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
because it looks very like solid.
It is. I mean, otherwise it would be dripping on me. And it can. I was a little worried, like, would it handle the heat? And it obviously has, because we just poured a nice cup of coffee this morning. So we've got a few of those for the family. Yeah. Now, I would imagine when we actually make these for the show, that's a sticker that he also made. You know, that'll be maybe a little bit more refined, a little bit more blended in. But you guys always love the mugs. You always love you always comment on the vast array and collection of mugs here. Here's my favorite one so far, courtesy of my son with the 3D printer. So I'm enjoying that. Now, all right, so let me say this here, right? One of the things, and I know that I know how the game goes, guys. I mean, obviously, negativity is going to sell. And if you can and I remember doing this like at WFAN, you would look at some of our digital content, which would absolutely explode. Like Sal and I consistently had by far the most views of anything on YouTube on WFAN. You can look that up. That's a fact. And we would just, you know, the content, there's another one that just fell. Oh boy. The content would just sell, right? And obviously the ones that went, I don't even care about the word viral, but the ones that generally had the most, the most click-throughs, whatever, the most traction were ones either, you know, an explosive debate or, you know, crushing somebody, a coach or a player, or like, you know, the Carl Banks stuff or some of the Mets stuff with Soto and Pete and Lindor, whatever, whether it was a chemistry thing. Those things always went through the roof. And I understand why, because that, you know, that salacious stuff pertaining to sports, that's always going to sell. That's always going to resonate. You could put out a tweet, and I've done this as a social experiment. Now, I'll never tweet something out that I don't mean. Doesn't mean it's always going to be right. But I just to contrast and look and do a little experiment, as I said, like after a big Nick win, I'm not every Nick win, but if it's something that catches my attention, a good quality win, you beat Denver, you beat a good team, whatever. Hey, Knicks looked great job by the Knicks tonight. Knicks looked awesome. Just a little short, little pop there. Put it out on the on social media. It might get, I don't know, 8, whatever is relative to me. I don't know. It's a decent number at this point, but whatever the number would be, right? And then you would look at the amount of likes and retweets and comments on something that I said, maybe like break up the Knicks, or I don't trust the Knicks, or, Cat's got to go, or I don't believe in Cat, or Cat's soft, or Bridges is soft. Like the comparison between the two is just ridiculous, right? And you know which one it favors, the one that's negative and the one that has that kind of energy. So the reason I say all this is because even with that being said, and I'm in the business of content creation and getting you guys to think and getting you guys to react, I don't want to, and I refuse to just turn into that person who just gets on the air and just espouses negativity for the sake of, this is going to be hot and this is going to get a lot of traction. Like, I can't do that. Like, it's going to come up naturally enough because I'm a passionate person. I'm a fiery person. I'm invested in what we do here on BT Unleashed. And it's going to eventually naturally come out because there's going to be enough storylines where it's going to be applicable and pertinent and you guys are going to react to it. So having said that, I could very easily just come out and take a wrecking ball to Adam Silver, take a wrecking ball to the NBA. And there's a lot of things that the NBA's got to fix. And I went through this about a week or so ago where I did crush Roger Goodell, and I stand by it. And the NFL on a lot of levels is, I wouldn't use the word broken. I'm going to say that for the NBA. I do believe the NBA is broken. I believe the NFL has kind of lost its way. I think the NFL caters too much to everybody but you, the consumer that helped build this product up. And the NBA's made some similar mistakes as well. When you look to globalize and when you get in bed with these networks, you are beholden to networks, and that's what drives the NBA, and that's what drives the NFL, and that's what drives Major League Baseball. It's the revenue generation from the TV contracts. Yeah, if you really think about it, merchandise is huge, but if you look at the actual breakdown, including the ridiculously high ticket prices at the Garden, that's not what moves the needle financially for the NBA. It's all these massive deals, whether it's a streaming deal, whether it's a more conventional network deal. So I want to come more with solutions today because I do love basketball. Now, I don't think Adam Silver is a good commissioner at all. And I think he's too deep into his commissionership, if you will. I think it's going to be impossible to just kind of change certain things. I think once you open the jar, it's really hard to stuff certain things back. And I don't want to just take the low-hanging fruit and say, well, Adam Silver's biggest mistake was giving too much power to the players or getting a little bit too political, certainly during COVID, which I do think has been a massive issue, and a lot of people resent that, but I don't think that that's the main thing. I really think, and I'm going to lay a few things out here for you. I think, and I never really thought this until the last couple of years, but boy, it's so obvious now. When you think about the entrance into these different leagues, right? Major League Baseball, you get drafted, you go to the minors, unless you're like a Dave Winfield or, John Older. Like very few players go from college to, a major league field. There's a progression. Now, it's getting more and more truncated where AAA is less viable, AA more is the launching pad. So instead of starting low rookie, maybe you start at high A, play 30, 40 games if you're a stud, get bounced up to AA, show what you got, like an Acuna, players like that. Bang, here you are on the show. And if you stay healthy, generally things work out. But a Major League Baseball team, like, when the Yankees took Derek Jeter 6th overall all those years ago, the Yankees were not dependent upon and waiting for the arrival of the almighty savior to elevate their team. Now, that wasn't the case. Eventually, he got there, and eventually, as a rookie, he won the job because Tony Fernandez got hurt, and he fit in very well, and it was a seamless transition. But the reason why those Yankee teams early on in certainly in 96, why they were so viable is because they had veterans everywhere, and they had a lot of good players, right? Think about the NFL draft, which I cannot wait, and I got a lot of stuff on the NFL today. We're banging out the NFL because I love what Harbaugh said. It really got me thinking. Going to have a fun conversation about the NFL in a bit. But when you think about the NFL, and even as a quarterback, right? Yeah, I mean, Mendoza go first overall. He'll start right away for the Raiders. But if they don't have an old line and all the other pieces, he's not going to do well. And generally, like you look at whether it's a Bo Nix, who's not a star, but, drafted, fits in, good coach, good defense, ball control. He cannot drown, and his team could win, even though he was a first-round pick and he's a quarterback. The NBA is at a distinct disadvantage. And I don't really know how you change this because you're not going to go back to the old days where, you've got to play multiple years in college before you get drafted. The NBA is all about drafting really on potential. And when you think about these bad teams, and there are a lot of bad teams, which is a massive issue with the NBA, you're asking a 19-year-old, almost basically a boy compared to the grown men in the league, like a young man. I mean, boy's ridiculous, but you know what I mean. A young man who is not physically equipped to deal with that burden and is not mentally equipped to deal with that burden. That doesn't mean that there aren't a bunch of rookies who stand out. Like there's got to be a rookie of the year. I get it. But think about the situation and then the reliance of these kids when they go to the NBA. So you get drafted by a 13 or a 14-win team. You played 1 year in the NBA. You played 1 year in college. Everything about the draft is about projectability, and you're going to a bad team. So not only are you not physically equipped and mentally equipped to be the man yet because you're not fully a grown man yet at the age of 19, but also, which compounds the issue, you are going to a bad team. And you're going to a bad team doesn't have, a lot of good veterans, which means you're not insulated and protected by those veterans. You probably don't have a really good coach because, the bad teams just recycle and go through coaches left and right. So it's really a rough situation. And, well, what does all that mean pertaining to the growth of the NBA and the state? Maybe not the growth. That's more economic. The state of the NBA. I'm going to tell you what it means. What it means is very simple. You've got a product that people don't enjoy watching, period. Now, when that 19-year-old kid becomes 22, 23, maybe even 21 in some instances, but you play a couple of years, you're hitting the weights all year, nutrition's changed, now it's your job, that's your focus. That is a player more equipped to deal with it, and then you start to fill it out around that player, and that becomes a competitive team, all right? And now that's a team that you want to watch. But it is just a distinct disadvantage. Like these kids get drafted, they go to their teams, they play 30 minutes a night, their usage rate is high, and they're not ready for it. And when you have 7, 8, 9 teams, sometimes more, that is beholden and dependent upon young players who are, again, not physically mature enough to deal with grown men on a night-to-night basis, you're going to have a bad product here. So we can whine and we can complain about the All-Star setup and All-Star Saturday night. I didn't watch 1 second of All-Star Saturday night. I don't even know what they did Friday. I know that Cat and Brunson won and Alvin Houston, which is actually pretty cool. But I didn't watch it. I saw the highlights. And that's changed tremendously. And I don't think you ever get that back. See, the other thing that's happened to the NBA. So, and I understand it was through the eyes of a young sports fan. I'm going back to my early days, right? When I would watch Jordan and Dominique in the dunk contest, right? Spud Webb, those guys. They weren't necessarily worried about being embarrassed. I think what's happened now is that the modern athlete, the younger athlete, LeBron never did it, like they are so aware of their profile. They are so aware of how they are judged and graded. And in a lot of ways, it's unfair. So that, LeBron, say 10 years ago or 12 years ago, if we would have gone to the dunk contest and he would have bombed, he would have been ridiculed. And that wouldn't have happened to Michael Jordan. And that wouldn't have happened to Dominique. And I'm just trying to be fair. I'm not a big LeBron fan. He's a tremendous player. Can't shine Jordan shoes. Bouncing around. This nomadic NBA championship existence. Took a lot of shortcuts along the way. The stats are there. He's an all-time great. But to me, I don't want to say it comes with an asterisk. That's almost implying cheating. But I view it through a different prism. I just do. Now, I was watching yesterday with my son, and we were busy during the day. So we got back, we watched the championship. And the championship, it just like the old G's, the legs were shot. The old heads, they couldn't move. So I think that was a product of young legs, and they kept saying it. Reggie kept saying it. Fresh legs. I applaud the NBA for trying some certain things here, but I really just fear for the overall health of the NBA and the overall direction of the league. Because the things that have happened here, that's why I'm not yelling. I'm trying to come up with solutions here. But you look at Adam Silver, who, see, the difference between Goodell and Adam Silver, here's the difference. Goodell, you might not like him, and he's definitely not perfect, and he's made a million mistakes, but there is no doubt who's in charge, and that's Roger Goodell. And that's the kind of presence you need as a commissioner. You know, David Stearns didn't want to be loved. He didn't care about that. He wanted to be respected, and he wanted order in his league, and he got it. And to me, he's one of the best commissioners, maybe the best of any sport at any time. Somebody like Adam Silver, who was his number 2 all those years, and a smart guy and a nice guy. I think Adam Silver's a good man. I just think he's a number 2. He doesn't project any presence. He doesn't project any leadership. And I think his earliest mistakes was that he tried to run counter to his predecessor. And I think that was a massive miscalculation. He tried a different approach. I know the world was changing. I get it. I know there are a lot of issues that needed to be addressed. I get it, and I respect it, right? But I think Adam Silver went too far. He allowed the players to really dictate the league. And when you do that, you're not going back because the salaries are too high. They got too much juice. And now that is the inherent expectation. And if you try to abruptly, reposition that, I can promise you it will fail massively. So that's a big part of the issue here. Now, Adam Silver, any commissioner, but his job, I'm going to give you a couple of positives here, right? There's been massive revenue growth. That's undeniable. There has been global expansion, which has been undeniable, which obviously feeds into the economic, bolstering of the NBA. And there's a good thing, unlike baseball right now, there's been labor peace. The NBA has had labor peace. Now, you can run through, and I will a little bit, things that are real problematic with the NBA. And if there's a solution to be had, I'm going to give it to you. And I'm really coming to the table today trying to help solve this rather than just come out with negative energy and just make it worse, right? Because that gets old after a while, everybody yelling and screaming and complaining. But when you've got a decreased importance on the regular season, I really don't know how you change that. You could try to insert the NBA Cup in there. All right, that worked for a couple of days. That was interesting. Knicks played hard. And then, by the way, what did you hear after it when things went south for the Knicks? Oh, they were taxed out from the NBA Cup. So even the one good thing was kind of offset by a potentially bad thing that I think other teams really might look at down the road, all right? Talking about load management, talking about players skipping high-profile national TV games. That's a massive issue, which ties into load management. And then really, this is the biggest issue, the superstars running the league, the configuration of, these all-world teams and players dictating exactly when they're dealt, who they're dealt to. I don't know how you work around that because there's already a problem. It's out there. And I think any adjustment would require a massive collectively bargained concession on both ends. And you're not going to get it because the players have the hammer right now. Why in the world would they give that back? Now, you want to tell me financial incentive? I mean, how much more money could you make? And I don't begrudge them. I mean, you make what you're worth, right? You command what you're worth. Somebody's willing to pay to you. That's great. But you already have guys making $65, $70 million a year. I mean, what's the ceiling? 110 for one guy? I don't think that that's really economically plausible. Let me get Sean up here. Sean B, 50D. What up, Sean? How you doing, buddy? Only way to bring All-Star Saturday back, one-on-one Royal Rumble style. 15 current guys, 10 legends, 5 celebs, first point knockout. Guys run out of the tunnel full of surprises. That's pretty interesting. It's pretty innovative. Yeah, and by the way, I understand that you've got to do stuff like that. Sadly, to maintain viewership, to maintain interest, you've got to pull in the celebrity. You've got to pull in the actors and the musicians, and you got to have that. And by the way, I don't have a problem with that, because one thing I don't want to do, and I know I do it on occasion, but that's only because of how I feel about certain players. What I don't want to do, what I don't want to become, and I won't. Uh-oh. That thing's going to drop any second. Oh, God. And then you can already see it dangling. See that thing right there dangling right there? That's going to go any second. Whatever, Jay. What I don't want to do is just always say, oh, it was better back then. Oh, it was better. No, athletes are better today. And let's not recreate the past. What they used to do with the dunk contest, they used to have luminaries up there as well. And now a lot of it was like former players. Like when Dr. J was retired, Dr. J was, and then I remember Shaq, judging some dunk contests. You need to do that stuff. You got to incorporate the past, and you've got to have a vision that includes, pop culture stuff. And I think that the NBA does it pretty well. That thing's going to drive me freaking nuts. By the way, speaking of Dr. J, did you guys start checking out the Soul Power on Prime, the 4-part series on the ABA? I love it. I watched the first episode last night, and I watched the second one. Wow. It is really good. I've always had this intrigue with the ABA. It just seemed, well, number one, it was so counterculture. I mean, they went up against the NBA, and there were other fledgling leagues that tried to do it that didn't have the success. It's really well done. I mean, the thing, and I don't want to give too much away, but I'll give you this part. I never knew this. Obviously knew about Dr. J, Dan Issel, Rick Barry, the New York Nets, Virginia Squires. I mean, I've done a fair amount of homework on that. Like Bob Costas started with the St. Louis Spirit, and the Pacers were pretty much the class of the ABA. They won 3 of the 9 championships, then the merger, blah, blah, blah. I did not know that they were this close to getting Kareem. And that was an amazing revelation that was incredibly well done on the actual documentary, on the first episode, where Kareem, who's always been a man of principle and just has no time for small talk or nonsense or whatever, very direct. And I've interviewed Kareem a few times, and it's not easy. I've interviewed him twice on the radio, and once when I was doing the Wheelhouse on SNY, we had him in studio. I forget what it was for. And it was amazing. I've got a picture with Kareem. I remember the first time I had him on the air, somebody in management, this was at 10:50. It was at the Final Four. And they're like, be careful. He doesn't really love basketball. He doesn't love talking about basketball. He loves talking about more societal issues. So if you just try to come out and just cram, not that I would cram stats down his throat, but just talk about basketball, probably going to be pretty boring. So I came a bit of a different route, and it wound up being great. And I had him on for 30 minutes straight, incredibly informative, really, really, one of my favorite interviews because he's a hard guy to interview. But what I didn't know about Kareem that I learned last night is that George Mikan, who was the ABA commissioner, which I did know, thought to be the first truly great big in the history of the NBA, Minneapolis Lakers, about 6'10", game much slower below the rim, but he was like the giant of the NBA. And then he became the commissioner. And Kareem was open to playing in the ABA. And he basically said, NBA, you get one shot. Give me your best offer. ABA, you get one shot. Give me your best offer. And the way it went, the ABA owners, right, they pulled together $1 million, which was a massive amount of money back then. And they had $1 million check. And they actually showed the check on the episode. And what George Mikan didn't do, he didn't bring the check to the negotiation. So the ABA's offer was lower. But because Lou is a man of principle, he did not give the ABA a chance to make good because they met. And George's like, well, I've got a check for you for $1 million. And we did this. We committed. We all pulled it together. And I'm sure Kareem's like, all right, fantastic. Where's the check? And when he couldn't present it, he just didn't bring it for whatever stupid reason. Kareem wound up going to the NBA, which is insane. Can you imagine? I don't know what would have happened at that point if he would have stayed or gone to the ABA. Who knows? But man, oh man, it was viable anyway with guys like Rick Barry and Dr. J and those dudes Spencer Haywood with the the litigation. I mean, with that, really, really good. Watch it. All right, let me get in at Inside the MLB. The most prominent issue is the schedule being too long. If the Jazz started 13-8 in a 65-game season, there's no way you could tank at that point, even if they wanted to win 1/3 of the season, even with 1/3 of the season down. I get that, but guys, you got to understand. Listen, that's why I'm trying to come with solutions here. I know I'm throwing a lot at you here, but the ultimate motive is to really help make the NBA better. And you can't truncate the season. I don't know. Not that I wouldn't be okay with it. Like, even if Major League Baseball went from 162 to 150, I'd be fine with that, even though I'm rooted more as a purist baseball fan than I am somebody who wants to just, disregard the past and completely start over and change the game. I think that there's a happy medium. I think there's a happy middle. But the problem is all of these TV contracts are tied into volume. So I don't know how you'd go from 82 to 65. And here's the other thing, too. Even if they were able to do it and the union could agree and it's collectively bargained and the networks are okay with it and everybody's fine with it on the surface, what ultimately would happen, because this is what players do, they get greedy and they just keep pushing. And I don't blame them. They push the boundaries. And I can promise you, while we definitely have a load management issue now with a full 82-game season, it might not happen right away, but let's say downstream 3, 5, 7, 10 years down the road, if a 65-game season became the norm, you would have guys still, taking maintenance days, and then we'd be or maybe my son and his generation will be having the discussion if that ever happened. Now you've got to go from 65 to 50. I mean, so I believe that. It sounds good. Oh, just condense the season. They'll play harder. They'll play more. They will initially, and then it will go away, and we will be presented with a new set of issues. I really believe that. Take the lottery balls away at Modern Cyphus -RU. I believe that was 5X. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, that sounds good. I would like to see some sort of modification where tanking's not rewarded. Now, it's not the ultimate reward because those balls are still a bit unpredictable how they bang around. I mean, if you think it's fixed, I don't know what to tell you. I do think it was fixed in 85 with Ewing to the Knicks. I do believe that. I really do. As the story goes, when Stearns reached into that little thing that they had like these placards on there with each team's logo. And what they said was the Knicks. I mean, I don't even know if I should believe this. I do, though. It's a good story, so I'm going to run with it. That when he grabbed the cold one, when he grabbed the save, like they were like the third pick, when he grabbed the cold one, he would like drop it and then get one that was warm and a different temperature, and the only one remaining was the cold one, and everybody knew the cold one was the Knicks. I mean, that's how antiquated, cheating or manipulating is probably a better way to say it was back then. I mean, I know Ernst & Young, everybody's sworn to secrecy and, non-disclosures, NDAs, you got to sign your life away, and X amount of people are in the room. I don't even know if you could cheat anymore. I really don't. But, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues. Problem is, I don't think many of them get resolved here. I really don't. We could talk all day about what's wrong with the NBA. There's a shortage. There's a dearth of possible fixes. And that's the reality of it. At Omar, the problem with making the court bigger, wider when you move the three-point line back is it takes defense that much tougher. If you spread out the court that much, it's going to be impossible to stop drives. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not really talking about that now, although that is, I do think one of the issues, think about this, guys, right? Little side swipe here to incorporate everything, like a society thing, not politics, like a societal thing, and why they need to change. Just think about the basic configuration of the court. So it's 94 feet in length, and it's 52 or 53 in width, 50, maybe even 54, but it's in the low 50s, right? But it's certainly 94 feet in length. When a basketball court, when the court was designed, all right, think about the average size of Americans, and now just bodies across the world, because the NBA truly is a global sport, like most sports these days. The NFL's probably behind all the other sports with the globalization, but just the size of people has obviously morphed into something that was very different from the previous turn of the century. So if you go back to certainly Fenway and Wrigley, and even like the old Tiger Stadium. The reason why those seats were so much smaller is because the average human was smaller in terms of height and in terms of absolute, just sheer girth, right? And through evolution, people have gotten bigger, they've gotten wider, they've gotten taller, and they've had to make those. They've made those modifications at the new stadiums. And I have not been to Wrigley Field yet. I know that that's criminal. That's got to change. Been to Fenway a bunch. You sit in a Fenway seat compared to one of the even Yankee Stadium or Citi Field. It's like night and day. It's not even close. And I remember. So I don't think I felt it the first time, but I definitely felt it the second time. So when I was 12 years old, I played against Japan in this baseball. It was like a goodwill friendship, like a mini Olympics kind of thing. So I was 12 years old, and we played at all the boroughs. It was awesome, right? We beat them like 7-2. They were phenomenal. It was one of the highlights of my sporting life. I didn't play a ton. Wasn't one of the best players on the team. But I remember going to the tryouts, and everybody got a number, and it was at Lafayette in Brooklyn, right? And 800 kids tried out, and they took like 15. And a few were my buddies from where I grew up, one of whom got drafted, pitched at Seton Hall, like just studs everywhere, right? So I played, but I didn't play that much. But I remember when the championship game was in Cooperstown, Doubleday Field, right? And it was amazing, but I didn't feel it at that point. But then I went back and I played in a college tournament. And because now at that point, I'm 19 or 20, I'm 6'2.5", 205 pounds, whatever the heck I was at that point, versus, a kid who hasn't even hit puberty. I was a little late to develop, so I was one of the smaller kids on the team at that point the first time. When I went back, the dugouts were so low and so noticeably counter to what major league dugouts, let alone the seats in the stands, had become because of the evolution of the human body. So that's a little sideswipe, right? Now back to the configuration of the NBA court. Think about this. So when the NBA when basketball was invented, right? Peach pits, all that stuff, the little set shot, guys dribbling like this, right? The nut hugger shorts. It's the same dimensions that those players 100 years ago were playing with. Not quite 100, because the NBA was built in the 1940s, I think 47. So, whatever it is. Soon it'll be 100. And to me, that's wild. So there's been no adjustments. There's been no modifications to the actual parameters of the court. Yet everybody's getting bigger. Everybody's getting faster. Everybody's getting stronger. Everybody jumps out of the gym. When you look at, the conventional starting fives back in the day, your point guard, and when I say back in the day, I'm not talking about like Bob Cousy I'm talking about even Isaiah. All right, your point guard, 5'11", 6'1", like Isaiah. And then, of course, Magic came, broke the mold, and then now, guys like Penny and many others after that. But, back then, you usually had like a 6'1" point guard. Your shooting guard may have been anywhere between 6'3" and 6'5" on the high end. All right, your small forward was probably 6'5" or 6'. Think about guys like Adrian Dantley, dudes like that, guys who could fill it up who weren't tall, right? And then your power forward, maybe in the 6'7", a little beefier. And then, you probably had a 7-footer. But there was a lot of 6'10" guys and 6'11" guys. So now think about your starting dimensions. Your point guard, 6'5", minimum. Brunson's kind of an outlier at this point if you think about it. Your two guard is 6'6", 6'7". Both wings are going to be, round 6'7", 6'8", who can jump out of the gym and fly up and down the court. And your big is not only going to be 7 feet, but he's stepping out hitting threes. So how do we expect those big bodies? This is not a silver thing. This is just a little side swipe of the conversation as we swipe. As I jump around. It's really unrealistic to think that the game could look the same or that it's smart or fair to have that. God, that thing is, that's annoying me. As long as it's not on the logo. As long as the logo's not on. You see what I'm saying, Jay? See, on Friday, the logo was getting peppered with light, which took away. I'm like, man, the logo looks so good in my office before I flipped on the show. And I got lights banging right through the beam, the T, the unleash, it's barely visible. The logo does look sick. The
logo looks great. Looking clean. I mean, people are loving it in the comments down below. So
Nice.
there we go. Job well done.
Yep, just got to work on those lights, which is something I'm obviously doing here. Oh, by the way, quick aside here. I know that you guys, because I had them on a week or two ago. I guess it was it last week? May have been last week. When did we have Sal on? Everything
2 weeks ago.
It was 2. Okay, that sounded more. It's what I thought. So 2 weeks ago, we had Sal on the show. I'm going to go on Sal's show Wednesday. So I'm going to hop on Sal's channel, give him a sub, hook him up, help him out. You guys just keep demanding BT and Sal. We're going to give it to you when we can. Obviously, I'm doing what I'm doing. He's doing what he's doing. But it makes no sense not to get together as often as we could, because that dynamic and that chemistry is obviously, very strong and very natural and very apparent. When he came on, it was a blast. It was just like, it was, even though we texted, I've seen him once or twice since the end of the show at the Fan. Like, we haven't done a radio show in, at that point, well over a month and a half. Flip open the mic, put on the camera, like the old days. So it is something that we're aware of, and I loved having him on my channel. I'll get him back up at some point soon. I'm going to go on his Wednesday at 8. All right, so make a notation of that. Wednesday night, 8 p.m., probably for about an hour. Be a good time. I got to see how Bada Booms is hanging in.
Oh, man, that'll be fun. Oh, my God. There's going to be some clips from that.
Oh, God, yeah. I'm looking forward to that. So that is on Wednesday night. What else we got cooking? Oh, and then just one more thing, the extension of the BT and Sal thing. We are, I would say, if there's 10 steps, we're definitely in the early stages, but BT and Sal Live 2.0 is in the works, and we're definitely going to Long Island. We've definitely got the venue. Can't tell you yet which one it is, but we're going out east. We'll be on Long Island. The goal is to do it right before the start of the baseball season. Again, we got to flush through these dates, what works for him, what works for me. I anticipate, being on the road quite a bit with St. John's during the NCAA tournament. So I've got to work around that. He's got to work around some stuff as well. So it might not work out before the season. Higher probability early-ish April, which will still be great because the Yanks and the Mets will just be getting going there. So that'll be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. All right. So anyway, I talk about, before I get some other stuff, I got burning questions coming up in a bit. The massive revenue growth and the global expansion and the labor piece are all great checks in the column for Adam Silver, right? But you talk about the frustration of the fans where, the premium ticket prices, and there's no assurances the Stars are going to play. I don't know how you work around that. You cannot mandate. You just can't. You could try. It's going to sound good at an Adam Silver press conference. Oh yeah, we're looking into it. Oh yeah, we're trying to get to a place where the best players play in the marquee matchups and those primetime TV matchups. How are you going to tell? Let's just say, I'll take the Knicks. How are you going to mandate that the Knicks play? Let's say Jalen Brunson tweaks an ankle, which he's done a few times, and he could probably make it back, but the Knicks take the prudent route, as they should at this point, with bigger issue, championship, what they're going to try to get this year. Regular season, not as meaningful. And they're like, the more prudent thing is, I'm talking about the Knicks, we want to, even though it's a big game, or we're playing the Celtics or the Cavaliers or whomever on national TV, the Lakers on Denver and the Pistons. Well, you know what, though? We'd love to have them, but we'll hold them out one more day. Was the NBA going to say, nope, Jalen Brunson's got to play? What are you doing? We mandate that he play. You can't do that. That's where common sense has to prevail. And that's where I do try to be fair to Adam Silver. I just don't know how much of this you can truly manipulate. Now, listen, guys, the overall dilution of the 82-game season, massive issue. Really, I think that the overall trust of the league has evaporated. I do. I think the overall trust of the league has dissipated to the point where it's I think it's at an all-time low. I really do. I think some of it's the officiating. And I do think that, even think about the final 2-minute report, right? Think about that. You get that. There's like a bad call. They miss a foul. They call a bad foul, whatever it might be. The NBA comes out the next day. Oh, yeah. Hey, listen, guys, we reviewed it and we were wrong. Great. Doesn't solve anything. What you want to do maybe is provide a checkpoint here. Now, this is getting in the weeds, but if they mess it, but this goes into the viability and the authenticity of the product. And officiating is a major issue in the NBA. It's a major issue in the NFL, which I talked about with the Goodell stuff. But at least if there was something that you can flip in there, like, all right, guys, we messed up. We just went through the process of our 2-minute review. Here's our answer. And oh, yeah, by the way, because Team X got blatantly screwed and we messed up with 0.3 of a second to go or 2 seconds to go, we're going to reverse the outcome of the game. Like, I know that sounds wacky, but what? There it goes. But why in the world? All right, we're down to one. Why in the world would you have a 2-minute report if you're not going to do anything about it? To me, it's equally frustrating. I can't stand that. So that goes into a trust. And I do believe that the NBA, unlike, and now the other sports did it as well, but they really politicized things during COVID. And I think it hurt a lot of fans. And this is not to even get in the weeds on the topics and the sensitivity to them. I got no problem doing it. I just want to keep moving now. Not because I'm afraid to touch it. I just got a lot to do. But if you think about like in the bubble and during COVID, like there was like the messaging was very clear, was very distinct. And that was great for some people. And that was a massive turnoff for others. So I just think that they've made some missteps along the way. And there's inherently some things built in that I don't think that they could solve. Again, you draft a kid 19 years of age. All right, yeah, mate, great, fantastic. He might be awesome when he's 22, 23, and he might win the Rookie of the Year, but he's not really impacting the bottom line. There's too many young pups out there playing against grown men who are going to get their lunch taken. Like, you can't expect those guys to compete. They're going to try hard. They're going to try to physically compete, and their skill is through the roof. I mean, the skill level is as high as it's ever been. But I got to keep that up there, Jay. I'm going to do that in a sec. But I just think that when you have, so many young teams, you're going to have so many lopsided games, and nobody wants to see it, and that's a tune-out. How do you change it? I really don't think that you can at this point. That's why I say inherent disadvantages with some of the things of the NBA. All right, at Charlie F6675. Charlie, what's going on, buddy? BT, to stop taking in the NBA, what about taking the records of the bottom 10 teams only for the first half of the season? What about taking the records of the bottom 10 teams from only the first half of the season? Oh, I see. And then what? Wait, that's still confused. And then what? Like wipe it out, start over second half, and that's what applies in terms
my
of
thought is
the
almost
tanking?
like for like the draft lottery. He's saying like basically in the first half of the season, you're showing your true colors as a team rather than like a planned tank towards the end of the season. And to only count those that record through the first 41 games for the draft lottery. So let's
but what if, hold on, but even that, okay, I appreciate the ideas. I'm an idea guy. I'd like to be a solution person here as well. But that's not a solution, because how do you circumvent that? All right, you take the first 41 games seriously, and then you try to lose every game after that.
Yeah.
So that's part of the issue. I mean, listen, Adam Silver's a good guy. I don't think he's a good commissioner. I think he's done a lot of things that you can't change at this point. He's just too far deep into it. I don't know what the answer is. I don't pretend to have the answer, but I know that there's got to be some answers. But again, I will say, and I actually think this is a little sad. Jay, we got burning questions coming up in a sec. Be ready for that.
Sir.
Thank you, my man. So one of the things too, and I like that Anthony Edwards said this. I like that he recognized this. And again, I would have watched more of just out of curiosity, of the All-Star games yesterday. Again, Saturday night shooting. I mean, listen, there was a point where, like when Larry Bird was shooting and Trent Tucker, like not everybody was shooting threes. Craig Hodges, Craig Elo, like those snipers back in the day. So, like, there was still some intrigue with the three-point contest. I mean, the three-point contest at this point is about as interesting as the layup line. I mean, it's become that common. So, I'm going to suck me in with that, even from half court, whatever. Come on, man. Guy's been pulling up near the logo for the last 10 years. Lillard, LeBron does it. It is what it is. So, but I did give it a chance yesterday, and I would have watched more. I just happened to be out with my son. And we got back. We watched the last one, and it was the worst game of the four. But I did like what Edwards said post-game. He's like, yeah, listen, man, like, Wemby, he gave Wemby credit, because Wemby came out and the first three games were very competitive, and Wemby set the tone. My question is, like, why do you need a young player to set the tone? Shouldn't the pride come from the veterans? And it has nothing to do with domestic, international. Like, I don't care about that. If a young American player came out and set the tone, to me, it's the equivalent of a young foreign player coming out and setting the tone. At least somebody had the gumption to set the competitive tone. And even if you had no designs, like a LeBron or some of the other veterans coming out and playing harder, right, or with more focus and purpose, when you have a young buck trying to school you and serve you, your competitive juices can't help but come out. So I thought that was good that Wembayamba took that authority and showed that leadership. And I thought the product absolutely, was rewarded for that. But, I know many of you didn't like it. I know many of you didn't watch it. I know many of you complain about it. It is what it is. All right. I want to get to some stuff with Horrible here. I think you guys will really like the football stuff. First up, though, it is time now. We'll do it every Monday here on BT Unleashed. Time for Burning Questions. This is going to be a lot of fun. Brought to you by my friends at Sullivan-Papain. Get fired up with Sullivan-Papain at every St. John's home game this season at the Garden. Remember the name Sullivan-Papain, a winning team on the court and in the courtroom. Find Sullivan-Papain at triallaw1.com. That's triallaw1.com. Sullivan-Papain. Remember the name Sullivan-Papain. All right, every Monday, Burning Questions. First up, what will the Mets team chemistry be like in 2026? Now, I know this has been a massive topic, and the reason I'm bringing this up now, and by the way, these are kind of quick hits, and we'll get back to the show. 3 things I find interesting, and I wanted to do this on Monday, a little more content to grab from. But what's the Mets team chemistry going to be in 26? Now, it's a little played out. I mean, we've talked about this for years. What about Pete? What about the fight in the tunnel, the squirrel, the rat, the raccoon, whatever the hell it was? Did he get McNeil the car yet? Yeah, he did. It took him a year. All those things that we would kind of focus on. See, I don't really care a whole lot about chemistry when you're winning. The lack of chemistry, right? And those are two different things. You cannot have great chemistry. That's one aspect of it. And this, I'm not even talking about the Mets in general. Yeah, just not amazing chemistry. But then the other side, you could actually have friction. And then, of course, the ultimate is what you're chasing, great chemistry and really good players. And those are teams that win. If you have, if there's dysfunction and relationships and people who just don't get along for whatever reason, which I absolutely believe plague the Mets clubhouse. Listen, there's no coincidence. The guys that got shipped out, that's not a coincidence. That happened by design, okay? And I get into this today because Soto and Lindor both spoke about this. Now, it's going to be interesting. I don't think that they had great chemistry last year. Those two. I'm not even talking about Pete and Nimmo and Lindor. And those. I'm talking about Soto and Lindor. I don't think it was problematic necessarily, but I don't think it was like, say, I almost don't even want to do this because it's going to get hijacked because I really don't care that he's gone at this point. And I'm certainly not, and I wish he was still there, but I've moved on. I don't think it was like Soto and Judge. I think that those guys genuinely had an affinity for each other, and they obviously, worked incredibly well together. I think it translated off the field. Both personalities similar, both kind of tacticians and surgeons and deeply invested and immersed in their process of hitting and getting ready to play. And I just think it was an easy relationship. For whatever reason, I feel like maybe Soto and Lindor hasn't quite been as easy. Doesn't mean it's going to exist forever. Doesn't mean it's going to be a problem forever. Both addressed it over the weekend, as I said. Now, if you don't believe me when I say that, there was some chemistry issues, well, Mendoza even hinted around it when he said last year's clubhouse, quote, was too corporate. That's code for we weren't having any fun. And then I would think a subset of not having any fun is guys getting on each other's nerves a little bit and, partially, and have great pitching. So partially contributing to a very underwhelming season with 83 wins. So the first burning question, what will the Mets team chemistry be in 2026? All right, number 2. And I already know the answer to this, and it's going to really piss me off when I get the ultimate answer. Because I'm getting the sense, even if he hits 390 with 4 bombs and hits well from the right side, Jason Dominguez is not going to be on the Yankees opening day roster. And I think that that's absolutely ludicrous and stupid and really emblematic of some mistakes that the Yankees continue to make. So question number 2, burning question, will Jason Dominguez be on the opening day roster? Notice I'm not even talking about Spencer Jones. That's a given. He's got no chance to make the team, and I'm fine with that. He needs more seasoning, right? Just strikes out too much. But we can have a real in-depth baseball discussion, and we could agree to disagree. There's varying takes on Dominguez. I think he's a very interesting player because what I've seen from his floor already is pretty reassuring. Hit basically 260, stole 20 bases, 9 or 10 bombs, and good patience. His on-base percentage and his inability to have quality at-bats and get on base at a decent rate, let's not throw him in the Wells-Volpe category. Those guys are never on base, and their numbers are ridiculously unacceptable. Like Austin Wells has a 28% on base percentage. That's just sickening. And we know where Volpe's numbers have lied the last couple of years. Sickening, unacceptable, and they've got to improve it. If they don't, the Yankees are going to have to move on, either put him at second or get rid of him because Lombard's coming, So I do think that Dominguez, to me, has at least satisfied the very, very basic requirements. This is why I'm annoyed. And the question is this: do I believe that Jason Dominguez is a Major League Baseball player? The answer is unequivocally yes. I do believe that. Now, think about some of the, and I only bring the Mets into it because the Mets had a lot more prospects, like the Beattys, the Mauricios, obviously Acuna, who's dealt, Sproat, who's gone, other position players. Alvarez has been hurt a lot. That's been more the focal point. They're young players for a couple of years now. And I think I'd be saying the same thing. Now, I think Beatty should hit 5th or 6th for the Mets and be their opening day designated hitter, play some outfield, play a little first base, bounce around a little second. You want to give Bichette a day third. I love his versatility, but he can hit as well. He's proven to me he's a Major League player. Now, he also showed more than Dominguez, to be fair. I don't know if Mauricio's a Major League player. I don't. I know he's electric with certain things, but his deficiencies worry me. I know Alvarez is a major leaguer. He's got to stay healthy and get a little bit better. I can't say this. I can't say anything positively about Jones pertaining to a Major League call-up because I haven't seen anything yet. But Dominguez, and I know what the Yankees are thinking. See, but the Yankees are now trying to correct what they messed up a year ago. And that's just stupid. That is bad. That's a bad job by the Yankees formulating a plan and then sticking by it, right? Now, I obviously understand the concept of if you're a young player, you need reps. You got to get out there, you got to play. So what the Yanks, and I saw the quote, they're going to let him play some center field in the minors. Okay. Get him some more work left hand from the righty part of the plate. Okay, great. To me, that's penalizing Jason Dominguez. I think you penalized him the last couple of months of the season when he didn't play. And I think you're penalizing him if and when, and I believe it will be when and not if, he starts the year in AAA. He's not a AAA player. Now, I'm not saying he's an all-star, but Jason Dominguez is a Major League Baseball player. And that's something else the Yankees fucked up. They did. And that's one of the main reasons about the Yankees. One of the things that drives me nuts about them. There's just, it's a deeper rooted issue that continues to manifest itself at different levels and with different people and really different ways, but it's all rooted in the same thing. They don't draft particularly well. They don't develop particularly well. And I think too often they don't give their young guys a chance to root. You got to play when you're a young guy. You got to play. And if they're going to lean on the notion that they believe that playing in the minors is going to be advantageous to Dominguez, okay, it's their team. That's their prerogative. I disagree. You're going to have to look this. Now, again, if he hits 112, it's going to be an easier conversation. He's not going to hit 112. He's going to hit some bombs because in spring training, because spring training, pitchers are just grooving fastballs and, they're just slowly incorporating their secondary stuff. They're not nearly a finished product. So the hitters always have an advantage early on in the spring, right? So Dominguez is probably going to rip. Then you're going to have to look and rake. Then you're going to have to look that young man in the eyes and say, hey, guess what? Good job. Hey, you're really, you did pretty well last year with a little bit of power, good wheels, good on base, and you hit the hell out of it this spring. Go have fun in the minors. It's the wrong message. I don't like it, and I don't agree with it. So, but that's still a question until it's answered. Will he make the Major League team? I don't think he will, and it bothers me. Finally, what's the ultimate ceiling here for St. John's? What is the ultimate ceiling for the Johnnies? I got to tell you. So, and I'll get into the fight in a moment. Boy, Providence has morphed into a sad version of what they used to be. The fans have lost their way. The administration's lost their way. How Kim English is still the coach is beyond me. And what went down up there on Saturday, I will get into deeper. I want to focus more on St. John's here. But how about this? And I remember this game like it was yesterday, and it wasn't. It was 20 years ago. I was trying to impress upon this to my son. or impress this upon my son. He didn't seem very interested, which bothered me, actually, because he loves history and stuff. And he loves everything, with work, with daddy and sports and St. John's. Maybe he was tired. I was actually like, what? That you didn't find that interesting? I was actually bothered. I didn't find it interesting. So in 2006, right, I was in the broadcast booth when the St. John's Red Storm snapped a 25-game road losing streak. 25 games in a row. May have actually been 26, but I think it was 25 in a row. And that was when South Florida was still in the Big East, and South Florida was terrible, like St. John's. And I did the game. It wasn't even Mink. It was Crispino. It was me, Crispino, good guy. He was doing the UConn Huskies now the last bunch of years, right? And my boy Tariq Turner, who's a great guy, former point guard St. John's. That we did every game together. So back then, I would travel to every game. I'd go to West Virginia, Virginia Tech, Miami, like you name Notre Dame, like and the older configuration of the Big East. I would travel all the time. Obviously, now I could travel again, but I've got more of a flexible schedule. But I had to stop traveling, partly because of the kids. I didn't want to miss anything, but also because I couldn't justify, the games weren't on WFAN. They used to be, but they weren't when I was there. So I couldn't tell my bosses at the Fan, hey, I'm going to be at Creighton on a Tuesday night, and I'm going to miss a couple of shows. You can't do that. Anyway, I had more flex back in the day when it was on 1050. So I would do all those games. And I say this because on Saturday, St. John's won their 11th straight Big East Conference road game. 11 straight. That's a program record. Now, think about that, which is amazing, and think about the stat that I just dropped on you that your boy had the misfortune of being in the middle of. 25 straight road losses. It was finally snapped in 2006. I remember leaving that arena, like the weight of the world was off the program. Nothing really happened if I was Norm Roberts' team. Great guy, not a good team. And it just shows you how far they've come. Now, if there's some dissenting voices out there, well, what would St. John's be without Rick Pitino? And what would St. John's be without NIL? I don't care because it doesn't apply anymore. And by the way, you're probably right. Like if St. John's was trying to do this the way like a few other Big East teams are trying to, like Seton Hall. Now, Seton Hall had more NIL money this year. Last year, they had basically zip. I don't mean literally $0, but nowhere near enough to get some players. They got a hell of a coach. They got a great fan base. It's a great university. I've got a lot of respect for Seton Hall. I really do. I like what they represent. And I've always liked what they represent. It's a good rivalry, right? And now they're like, this year they're like, all right, we got to throw some money into this thing. And they're better than they were a year ago. Still not good enough to make noise, but dollars correlate with success. Absolutely. So what would St. John's be with a bottom third Big East NIL budget? They'd be awful. Is what they'd be. Because Rick wouldn't be here and Zuby wouldn't be, and none of these players would be here. So I understand it. Like people think that bothers me. Oh, the only reason St. John's found their way out of, oblivion or irrelevance is because they decided to, get the checkbook. You're damn right. I mean, you get what you pay for. You know what I'm saying? Think about this. So that'd be the loose example. They're probably here now. I've got to fix the lighting in my studio, and they're coming today. It was supposed to come yesterday, got delayed, whatever. I don't even care. But I've got some good things that will change the optics, and where is it? That thing right there will no longer glow, and it'll look good, right? But today, I basically hung cardboard up, and it fell, four recessed lights, 3 of them fell off, right? I was literally up there on a chair with taping these cardboard, these things. Again, if you just tune it in to look, there's the tape, boom. And they felt you get what you pay for. So when you try to get an assistant who's unproven and you have no NIL money, guess what? You don't have 19,000 at the Garden. You don't have a top 20 team. You don't win the Big East a year ago, both regular season, Big East tournament. You don't pump out a couple of pros. Look at Jenkins. Zuby's going to get drafted. They got a few pros on the team. They're one of the better teams in the country. I think they match up really well with UConn, but I'm going to show UConn respect where I'm not going to say St. John's is the best in the Big East. Even though they beat them, I think that matchup at Stewart's is going to be tough, but I do think St. John's matches up well with them. But the point is, what is their ceiling? I think St. John's' ceiling, and I did not think this I don't say most of the season because they've been playing really well for a long time now with 11 straight wins. But I think that it's certainly been elevated. And, I told you, I remember watching the first couple of games. My son's like, this team's going nowhere. I don't like this team. And I was like, nah, it's early. Yeah, they got to figure it out. And as the first month went on, I'm like, man, he might be right. His first call might be right. I'm like, patience. Rick's got to get with these players, figure out roles, explain things to him a little bit. Doesn't happen overnight. And I actually think now, I think St. John's has a puncher's chance to get to the Final Four. I don't know if I'd bet on it. Not that I would ever bet on anything connected with St. John's. I would never do that, never have. But, like, if you're looking at, if I'm not doing these games and I'm looking at this completely objectively, why can't St. John's get to a Final Four? If they're not favored to get to a Final Four, you got some amazing teams, right? Amazing teams out there that can play defense and like St. John's and can put up 85 points a night like St. John's. Like, there are other teams that are phenomenal. But I think, and it's also matchup dependent. So I'm not going to give you too much on how deep they can go. But for a burning question, do I think St. John's, put it this way. Last year, we were all coming off a 31-5 year and the Biggie stuff when they got knocked out by Arkansas and played so poorly in that game. Everybody but Zuby, everybody played awful. RJ Lewis, rough game, right? And that was a bitter end to an awesome season. I expected that team to at least get to the Sweet 16. And I think I expected them maybe to go beyond that because they were a 2 seed. I think this year, I don't know that maybe it's not quite as wide, that net, but similar, at least the early rounds, you have to get to the Sweet 16 at least. You have to. You got to win a couple of games there. So I like St. John's' ceiling. I love the way they look right now. They have figured things out. And, for me, the biggest issue, just to the fight for a second, the biggest issue to me with what went down on Saturday, first of all, that was an absolutely ridiculous, dirty foul. We all know that. I don't need to, go nuts on that. Horrendous foul that really could have hurt Bryce Hopkins. That was Duncan Powell, right? The still shot. Now in real time, you're like, wow, that was aggressive because he came from behind and he made a play for the ball, but there was obviously Hopkins went flying, got up. Don't blame him. Was pissed off, looking for some retribution. A couple of the Johnnies had no issue with some smoke. Dylan Mitchell was ready. A lot of guys were ready. And thankfully, no real punches were thrown because that would have led to suspension. But Rick said after the game, he's like, you got to stand up for yourself. And I get it. And I thought Rick's post-game reaction was phenomenal because right away, I think it was Zach. He was asking about, it sounded like his voice. And if not that it's shade. And there's the last one. Not that it's shade anyway, but and I get it. Like if I'm a reporter, I'm asking about the fight. And Rick's like, hey, I want to talk about basketball. We're not talking about the fight. Like, because they asked, I think it was Zuby, what happened. And Rick said, you want to talk basketball? Talk. We'll do that. We're not talking about, you guys saw what you saw, write what you want to write, do what you want to do. And then he went into a commentary about like how back in the day you could always fight in the Big East. Now you can't. So he's got to teach toughness through defense and sharing the ball and having each other's back. But there's also a fine line when your guy, and then the still shot, which I started to allude to, you can see both hands around Bryce Hopkins' neck. I mean, that could have been really, really bad. So a couple of things that I had an issue with. Number one, it was an incredibly dirty foul, number one. Number two, now St. John's might not like me saying this, but I've got to say what I saw. There is no way that Bryce Hopkins should be at midcourt there when that's going down. There's no way because everybody had your back. 3 or 4 guys came off the bench and they got thrown out, rightfully so. It's a literal rule. If you leave the bench, you're gone. So can't even contest that. I did think, although I love what he did, I thought that Dylan Mitchell deserved to get thrown out of that game, And by the way, the way he ducked that punch from the other pal. No, who is that from? Sellers. Sellers on Providence. It looks like he's got a little boxing in his background. That was a quick duck. And a couple of guys were really ready to go, including Dylan Mitchell. I thought it was a rough look. Now, he may have really been hurt, although he kept going, so I don't know. But you can't be the subject. This is just my opinion. You can't be the subject of a hard foul where everybody has your back and you're at midcourt nowhere near it. I'm not saying this at all. You don't come in just throwing back, you don't just throwing left and right. I'm not saying you do that. Didn't like the way that looked with Bryce Hopkins at midcourt. And I don't know. I'll talk to Rick this week. I don't know if I don't know how forthright he'll be. He always is, so he probably will be. But I would imagine if I'm a St. John's player and you look at that tape, even if it's not said, if I'm Dylan Mitchell, I might be saying to myself, dude, I was in the middle of, I could have caught one on the chin for you. Like, where were you? Not enough that's going to be an issue moving forward. But I did think about that. I'd be lying if I didn't say that came into equation. Now, here's where those referees messed up. I thought they got pretty much everything right, really, and it was a 19-minute delay. It was wild, man. You had to look at the film. I get it, and I thought that they got it right. The one thing that they really should have done is that, when you get thrown out of the game immediately, and I don't understand why they allowed him to linger. I mean, he's just out there, sitting there talking. I really thought Duncan Powell should have been sent to the locker room. Like, why for 19 minutes is Duncan Powell visible and imploring the fans, and woofing and talking his smack? You got thrown out. Get lost. Like, I thought the Big East did a horrendous job with that, because now he's inciting the fans. A couple of fans got ejected. When something like that happens, it is the job of everybody. And Pitino got in the middle of the scrum to try to protect players. Other coaches did, trying to protect guys from leaving the bench. Kim English was in the middle trying to diffuse it. I don't think anybody stepped out of bounds except Powell. And, when they went to the film to come, I think 7 players in totality were thrown out. When you go to the film, you come up with the list. That's going to take some time because you got to watch frame by frame. Dylan Mitchell shoved Sellers. I think it was Sellers. Two-handed push. And then Sellers came back, tried to throw one. And obviously Mitchell ducked, right? So we talked about that. Zuby was kind of in the middle of it, but, not fists up, but there. Darling was there in the right way, in a good way, right? And then Hopkins was at midcourt. Why is Powell still there when it was immediately announced automatic ejection? There's nothing else to interpret. There's no more film to watch. They said it on the PA system immediately. Duncan Powell has been automatically suspended. I think they either suspended, whatever. Thrown out of the game. Good. Take your bag and go to the locker room. Why is he languishing around? It's only going to make it worse. It's going to feed into the energy. Take him. Now, he's at home, so I don't know that you really need police presence to usher him out, but maybe you do. I don't know. Because they had it in the middle of the scrum. And another thing, shout out to the Providence cops who got in the middle and made sure that it didn't really get out of hand. It could have gotten bad. It could have gotten really bad because of where it was and close proximity under the baseline. You got the student. I know the arena really well. The student section's right there. Cheerleaders, photographers. Like, there's a lot going on. So shout out to the police. Did a great job. But Powell just lingering around, laughing and throwing his hands up. It's a bad look. And that's the first thing that should have happened. All right, we got to sort through all this mess. We got a lot of names and a lot of frames of footage to roll through. So we're going to need some patience. And again, it took 19 minutes. Tell that young man to get lost. Now, the Big East suspended him for 3 games. If Providence had any sort of conscience, they would take away his uniform for the rest of the season and suspend him for the rest of the season. Listen, I really don't care what's happening up at Providence. It doesn't impact me. But I've always had great respect for Providence. I always have. It's a great academic school. It's rooted in Catholicism, right? I'm a product of the Catholic school system. You guys know that. Grammar school, high school. And I think that their morals and their virtues and what they're rooted in are things that resonate with me. Really good people up there, really good academic school, beautiful campus. They have lost their way. Their fans have become unhinged. I mean, when Cooley went back, that was reprehensible, what they did to Cooley. So let me get this straight. You're going to have that kind of animosity towards Bryce. And I get it to an extent. Like, he left your program stinks. Your coach is going to get fired. Probably should be fired now. English is doing it all. He didn't even deserve the job. What the hell did Kim English do to deserve that job? Nothing. You talk to anybody that's connected with college basketball, and when they hired him, they're like, really? That's the move? Okay. All right. Good luck with that. And how's it working out? Not well. And I get that the fans, they're going to be inflamed and sensitive to one of their, and Bryce Hopkins, before he ripped up his knee, was a great ascending player for the Friars. I get it. You miss him. You need him. You're pissed off. St. John's keeps, although you just beat them at the Garden. So you come in there with that animosity, but you've got to have, you got to comport yourself a certain way. I thought the fans were wildly wildly off base, and they've just lost any sort of control and any sort of presence and true viability with the program. Like you could be a diminished team. It happens a lot. You can't have your morals diminished. And it seems like Providence's fan base and what the coaching staff allows, that they're kind of doing that. So awful job by Providence. Phenomenal job by St. John's breaking through. St. John's was not playing well that day. They were not playing well. All right. J-Rod, hook me up with some look, let me see here. I got this here. All right. Hey, BT, this is at Rod Power 78. If St. John's plays Providence in the Big East tournament, Patino needs to designate a player to go after Powell, put him on the deck, similar to that scene in the Great Santini. No, I disagree. And by the way, I'm watching the game. That's not how you get retribution. You get retribution by kicking their face in, and coming back, being 1 point down, scoring the first 7 or 9 points after the fracas. Darling was great. St. John's responded the way I thought that they would, and they got a win. That's how you do. You just keep it moving. St. John's has too much to lose right now, and let's face it, Providence has nothing to lose. I mean, they're going nowhere. Not even going to the NIT. I don't even know if did they still have those other tournaments. They wouldn't even want Providence, the CBI or those other ones you got to pay for. I don't even know if they're around anymore. But Providence basketball is a shell of what it was. But you don't do that. Number one, Rick wouldn't do that. Number two, even if you put somebody out there like a goon to take a shot at Powell, well, invariably what's going to happen, Providence is then going to respond in the moment, and now you might have a player trying to protect one of their boys. Because let's face it, when things go down, you're not thinking clearly, especially when you're a young man. Think about some of the fights that you've had, all right? Thank God I haven't had one in a long time. I've got zero interest in doing it. But there's times things go down, like certainly in college, maybe a year or two after, right? Something happens. You're not asking questions. Your boy's in trouble. You're throwing fists. I mean, that's what you're doing. And some people, but that's the way it is, or at least that's the way it was. And I'm not saying that's right as adults. I'm not saying that. But if your boy's getting pushed around on the court and somebody throws a haymaker at him, one of their best players not going to think, well, God forbid if I throw a punch and I break a knuckle and I miss the tournament, he's going to go and get his guys back, because that's what teammates do. That's what competitors do. So you will not do that. That's number one. And then even if you didn't get hurt, you're going to get suspended. You don't do it. No way. I completely disagree. You got to end it, and you just got to understand they're in a bad spot. You got bigger things to worry about and a lot more to lose. At Hoboken Slap. Yanks are running it back. I have mixed feelings about this. Do we have a backup plan for Volpe? Do we have the pitching for the early part of the season? Let's go Yanks. Thank you very much. The backup plan for Volpe is Caballero. I think the backup plan, big picture, is Lombard. Now, the Yankees can say what they want. I know that Volpe's healing well, but even when he's healthy, doesn't really have an arm for shortstop, more of a second base profile. I'm not going to waste too much time on Lombard. I know that they love him. He seems to be different, but I've been down this road before. I got to see what you are before I start touting you as, oh yeah, that's you're the next Witt at shortstop in Kansas City. Tap the brakes. So I don't really know. Now they're running it back, and this has been a theme that we've hit a lot. I don't want to be redundant. I want to get to the Harbaugh stuff, but running it back to me is a little different. And I know that they said this. I know that this bothers some of you. But part of this, a lot of this is actually true. You're not running it back when you have Garrett Cole eventually joining the rotation. I know you want a Bichette. So did I. I know some of you wanted Tucker. I didn't, but I get it. I know some of you wanted Peralta, which I wanted them to trade for him. Didn't happen. I get it. But the greatest strength of the Yankees will ultimately this year prove to be their pitching, their rotation. Now, a lot of variables, and I'm not going to reset them again. I've done that a lot here, but they are banking on that. And, there's the deadline. I mean, the Yankees got their closer at the deadline a year ago. So you don't rule out a Quan in left field, whatever. I'm just throwing stuff out. I don't know. I mean, Skubal, who knows? Things going to happen. And I do think the Yankees would make a move to fortify their team midseason. I wish one of these years would happen in waves during the offseason instead of like, all right, little dribble here, like with Fried, or a little dribble here. All right, we got Bellinger back. Like, I'd like to see the Yankees go for it on a much more defined level, but not happening. So, but pertaining to the question, I don't think they have a backup for Volpe. Right now, it's Caballero to start, and then hopefully Volpe comes back a little bit more refined and a little bit better, and the Yankees win. And if not, shortstop's going to be an issue. It really is. All right. So did you guys see this? This was good. John Harbaugh said a lot of good things over the weekend. A lot of good things. John Harbaugh, who I love. John Harbaugh was on he was on Fox over the weekend. What I heard, though, I heard it in the car, and I read some of the stuff. Snippets from Mike Francesa's podcast, all right? So they talked a lot about, like, the number 5 spot in the draft, and I didn't even realize this. I mean, I guess if I would have thought about it in these terms, I would have thought about it, but I didn't. Like, he's never picked this high in the draft, number 5. So he's going into a team that needs a desperate infusion of everything. So, he got paid up the wazoo, $20 million a year. He's got all power. You can say whatever you want. Oh, Shane's still there. It's Harbaugh's show. We all know it. Everything he wants, they acquiesced, as they should have. And he also has a top 5 draft pick in a draft that's pretty damn good. This draft is going to be really good. Now, from a quarterback perspective, not so good, which, of course, impacts the Jets. But the things that the Giants need, Giants can go a multitude of ways here. Now, let me just give you, and I'll hit you with some names too, and I'll tell you what I actually think is the strongest part of the draft. But I am a believer, and a lot of you disagree with this, right? Here's how I see it. If there's a guy at a certain position that you don't deem important enough to draft that high, right? Well, don't take him. And a lot of this is rooted back to the Saquon stuff, which I do think is more applicable to a running back, right? But there's a player that, by the way, I would be okay. I would be more than okay, though I don't think they'll do it. I would actually love the Jets to take Caleb Downs at number 2. I really would. Or if you want to trade back a spot or 2 and take him. Like, to me, there is no reason why the Giants shouldn't take Caleb Downs. Now, you got to go through the process. I get it. You want another wide receiver, opposite neighbors. Get it. You want another O-lineman. I get that. You're not going to go edge rusher. You got enough at that point. So, to me, for the Giants, it really boils down to, are you going to look at the safety downs? Are you going to look at one of the couple of receivers, and I'll tell you about them in a minute, or do you go O-line? All right. Manure is a free agent, and obviously young quarterback. Never hurts to have that guy. I just don't get it. Like, and I do think running back is a little different. If Caleb Downs is what I think he's going to be, and I think what a lot of football people think he's going to be, and that is a ball-hawking, game-changing, field-flipping safety from minute 1, who you plug in there and say, all right, this kid's going to be an all-pro. And it's going to be a Pro Bowler, maybe the first year. He's going to be an all-pro 5-6 times in his career if he's healthy. That's how good I think Caleb Downs is. So let me ask you this. If you think that that's the case, why wouldn't you take him? Well, it's too early for a safety. No, it's not. Not if he's changing the entire complexion of your defense. Think about, now they need another corner as well. Another linebacker, like, they're not perfect. That's why they're picking 5th overall, right? But if you have a guy on that 3rd level who's going to be so good, that's only going to make the 1st level, which is the Giants' defensive strength, better, why in the world would you not be amenable to making that pick? Why? Because it's too early for a safety? Hey, just because the Jets took Jamal Adams at 6 doesn't mean that it can't. Number one, Jamal Adams couldn't cover anybody, couldn't run a lick, and they also took another safety, May. They took back-to-back safeties, probably advising the Giants not to do that. That's probably not the prudent thing to do. But this kid is the real deal, man. I think he is absolutely phenomenal. Now, I think the 3 best positions in the NFL draft, and I say this because Harbaugh even said, he's like, I love the kid, and which was interesting. He was very, very forward. Generally you aren't that specific about players. Now, Mike asked him and did a good job. And Harbaugh was comfortable with Mike, and they had a good conversation. Maybe in hindsight, John's like, maybe I shouldn't have divulged that much. Well, you did, and I thought it was great. So he was talking about him just name specific, position specific. And I love that. I think that the transparency and the honesty, like the lack of John Harbaugh being on guard with the New York media, is going to be phenomenal, because everybody else, whether it was Dable, whether it was Joe Judge, whether it was McAdoofus, that's McAdoofus. I remember the first time Sal called on that. At McAdoo, whether it was him, like all these guys were terrified to say anything. Now, Joe Judge eventually started talking. And ironically, once he started talking, he actually talked himself out of the job. That's why Joe Judge wound up getting fired. They were actually predisposed to bringing him back for a year. And then Joe just, for the last week or two, yap. All right, we got to get rid of you. So, I guess there's a fine line that you don't want to cross there. But John Harbaugh can do whatever he wants. So I think that this draft, all right, there are three positions that jump out to me that are by far the best. That, of course, every position has stars, but you're talking about, in no order, you're talking about edge rushers, you're talking about wide receivers, and you're talking about, to me, those are the top two. I can't even say safety, which is even more reason why, if you love Downs and you're thinking about taking a safety, like the drop between Downs and the next overall. Now, this is subjective. Let me give you an example. So right now, I love PFF. Shout out to those guys. They're not always right, but it's a good, intelligent read on what players are doing. Snap-to-snap evaluation. I love it. I don't look at it as the Bible, but I think it's a great tool, and they really do good work out there. So again, shout out to them. So PFF has Caleb Downs right now as their number 5 rated prospect, right? The next highest safety is number 35 overall in rank. So you are talking, and think about all the players that are going to go before the next safety. That doesn't mean that somebody can't view that safety in a more, I think he's from a small school too, in a more favorable light, and he goes late first round or early second. But if things kind of hold true, Downs is definitely going top 10. I think he's going top 7 for sure. I would take him top 5, and I would even maybe take him at 2 if I'm the Jets, as I said. But there's a good chance that next safety is late second round and possibly third, right? The other positions don't have that. So if you love Downs and you've got a premium pick and you don't need a quarterback like the Raiders do, you take him and you run to the bank and you love what you did. Whereas you look at the edge rushers, whether it's a Reuben Bain, Bailey from Texas Tech, probably more ready, I think, than the other guys. Howell, somebody from A&M, the kid Falk from Auburn. You've got who else there? At least 4 edge rushers. Definitely Bain. We saw him with the championship. Definitely Bailey from minute 1 at Texas Tech, and even Howell. I think those are probably the 3 best. You get to the wide receivers, whether it's a Cornell Tate, whether it's a Jordan Tyson from ASU, whether it's a Denzel Boston, he's from UW, whether it's Mekhi Lemon from USC, and they all have different profiles there too. All those guys are going round 1. Like Cornell Tate, 6'3". You look at somebody like Jordan, he's from Ohio State. Jordan Tyson, 6'2", $195. You look at somebody like Boston, 6'4", 210. You look at somebody like Lemon, totally different physical profile, 5'11", but stout, almost 200. So there's so many options there. I absolutely love Downs. And I think that, and I'm not worried about the Giants being manipulated, like their mindset being manipulated by what the fans are saying. You can't take a safety at 5. It's too early. You take the best one that you could take, right? Now, the other thing, too, I'll throw a little Jets on the table. I don't think that they'll take Downs at 2. I think they'll go edge rush at 2, or maybe linebacker, all right? Kid from Ohio State. And then you got to go offense. Like if the Jets don't, whatever order it is, and I'll let them figure this out. There's still a lot of evaluation, the combine, et cetera. But you got number 2, you got number 16. You got needs everywhere. Like to me, you need to hit home. You like the second pick overall has to be a home run, an absolute stud, no doubt, day 1 game wrecker on defense. All right, I'm not taking a receiver 2. And then at number 16, of course, there's trade-up options and all sorts of variations that could go down. But in my optimal world for the Jets, I'm walking away with somebody who is a disruptor on defense, and then somebody opposite Garrett Wilson at 16. That's what I'm doing. The pick you got back in the Sauce trade, I want a receiver. All right, I do. Now, I'd also be very intrigued by if Muji was, say, to go from number 2 to number, I don't know, just throwing stuff out, 4, 7, 8, whatever it might be, and get another first-round pick in the process. Now you could get 2 defensive needs, and then you could go with a receiver somewhere along the line. The good thing is when you stink, you need a lot. And I think additionally for these teams who both stink, although I think the Giants have certainly a better coach and I think an easier bridge to become very competitive here. At least they have a quarterback and a coach. Jets right now have neither that we believe in. But the Jets have a ton of capital, and they got a lot of resources. The money, $73 in free agent money, top 3 in the NFL. Like, I know we're going to have so many football discussions, and I can't wait for it. I can't wait for the draft. I can't wait. One of the things that we're going to do on the show, I can't tell you about it yet. I hinted about it on Friday. It's going to be massive, with a massive company that is going to be incredible for draft coverage. So pumped up about that. Fully believe it's going to go down. We had a conference call on Friday. So on Thursday, and I told you guys about it Friday. Good things are coming, all right? And I love the draft. Now, but you do have to look at this. And I know it's subjective. Like, take the receivers. You could look at one guy and say, that's a guy who's going to be 1,400 yards, 90-plus catches, when he, maybe not as a rookie, but you know what I mean, 8 to 12 touchdowns, stud. And then another team could look at that guy and say, yeah, but is he going to get jammed off the line of scrimmage? Or, he's got some height, but he's really thin. How's he full out? Like, there's obviously going to be counter opinions here. But I think the general consensus, and I agree with this, is that it's an incredibly strong wide receiver group. It's an incredibly strong, defensive around the edge and even a couple linebackers, very strong. And I think it's a very strong offensive line group. Jets don't need an O-lineman. Giants very well might. So, again, that's not to say they have to take Caleb Downs at 5. I'm just reacting to what John was saying over the weekend with Francesa, and I think that will be a home run. I love him. And you have to understand, if you really have dire need at safety, like both teams do, then you got to say, well, if this was a really strong safety class, even though Downs would be far and away better than anybody, in my opinion, but when you've got such a gap between the next best safety, that should on some level at least be maybe additional thought and incentive to take him maybe a little higher than ordinarily you would. Because once Downs is off the board, I'm not saying the next safety is not going to be good, whatever. So there's going to be some no name out of nowhere. I know how it works, but going in and using logic and using evaluations, massive gap. Don't have that at receiver. Don't have that at edge. Don't have that at O-line. You have it at safety. All right. So let me see here. Yeah, I do think the Giants could go O-line. I do. And by the way, they've only got 2 picks in the top 100. So the need for the Giants to bang, and I mean absolutely pop, is absolutely massive. Oh, pardon me, I put that up there. I'm sorry about that. At Boss Girl 8. What's up, Boss Girl? How you doing? BT, what if we signed a solid wide? I'm talking about the Giants. Okay. I think it's Giants here. Yeah, I think you're talking about the Jets, I assume. What if we signed a solid wide receiver in free agency? Dobbs, Robinson, Jennings, Pittman, if he's released, takes pressure off taking a first-round wide receiver. Reese Jets very well could take him at number 2. Very well could take Reese from Ohio State. Going to be an all-pro edge rusher in the NFL. Take him at number 2. Oh, so it is about the Jets. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to do this here. But if you believe that and again, strength in numbers, the abundance of very intriguing wide receiver possibilities, if you think one of those players is going to be better than somebody you can get in free agency, and by the way, is going to be cheaper, because if you get somebody in free agency as a wide receiver, unless it's, on a real team-friendly deal, which some of those names you probably wouldn't get, a guy who's taken 16th overall in the draft, even though it's a first-round pick, the money's not going to be incredibly punitive, where from a free agent perspective, I don't love using free agency for big ticket contracts, unless it's like a guy who's just for some reason, shakes free for some crazy reason, who's just entering his prime. And you do see that once in a while, but generally in free agency, baseball too, you pay for too high of a percentage of what that player already did in the NFL or already did in Major League Baseball. Like, all right, obviously a 15-year deal for Soto is ridiculous, but yeah, teams willing to pay it, including the Yankees, a little short of the Mets, but the Yankees came correct. And he was getting a ton of money no matter what, because he's a great hitter. But, also because he came up at the age of 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Last year, he was 25 with the Yankees, 26 last year. Like, that's 8 years of incredible, varying degrees of production, but incredible production. And it just illuminates that player's star. Are you telling me that when you sign somebody to a 15-year deal at that age, that it's going to work out? Well, no, it's not. And you understand that. you bite the bullet on the back end to get the production on the front end. And, it's somebody like Soto, you can justify that, but there's too many players in the NFL where that happens. And it's obviously a shorter shelf life given the injury and given the attrition of the NFL. So, I get excited when you have a lot of free agent money because I've referenced it quite a bit. Jets have 73, 74 million bucks, among the top 3 in football. It sounds good, but you've got to be very judicious in how you spend it. You don't just want to go, 2 big ticket items and then have, you want to just plug in. You got to here's the bottom line. You got to get backups off the field. That's the starting point for the Jets. The Jets had too many scrubs starting. So what happened was, especially when you traded Q and you traded Sauce, which I like, but it left a massive void, which I'm okay with bigger picture, but week to week, it was brutal. You had guys who were backups, then obviously being thrust into starting roles. Okay, that happens quite a bit. Injury, trades, whatever, defections, free agency, guys got to step up. But the real issue for the Jets was that they had taxi squad guys who were then elevated to the roster. And because the backups were now starters, you had taxi guys who were becoming backups, who were playing too much, like in nickel and dime packages. What are we doing? Like, that's untenable. You cannot compete at that level. And that's why the Jets had the worst point disparity in any month in the history of the NFL, because you had guys who shouldn't be in the league out there. So I think really, and I'm sure the Jets are going to get one massive free agent. They might get the center from Baltimore, Lindbaum, which I'd be very okay with. But I am more concerned with just getting substandard players off the field, okay, drafting better and having those frontline players assume roles, and then now having the backups, be real, fringe starters on different teams, on good teams. And the way you accent the roster with free agency is to bring in guys who maybe were, mid-level starters elsewhere. Don't pay them as stars, but have them for a year or so come in, fill some gaps, and at least be solid, serviceable pros. Like, I don't know if Muji's thinking that. That's kind of what I'm thinking. All right. Let's go here. At Timmy Thomas 0580. Tim, what's up? What do you see as the biggest draft day needs to address on day one outside of quarterback? Guys, you got to specify the team, because we're not just talking Jets and Giants. We're talking right now we're talking primarily Jets and Giants. But when you get into the draft, you got to specify the team. I'm assuming that you mean quarterback, obviously, because the Jets don't have one. The Giants do. The biggest draft day needs to address on day one. Well, I gave it to you. The Jets have to walk away with a massively disruptive defensive force. And if he's on the third level of downs, great. If it's Ruben Bain on the edge, great. Or somebody else on the edge, great. If it's Reese, a linebacker, and he pans out, great. But it has to be a frontline defensive stud, number one. The second way, now listen, say if you do get a wide receiver in free agency and some of the receivers that you covet are gone by 16 and you can't move up, whatever, and there's one or two defensive players that unexpectedly slip and you love, and you're going to be married to your board and you got to trust Muji and hopefully it works out, and you go defense, I'm not going to go nuts, but then you'd have to obviously bring in a receiver with free agency. But again, ideally, Tim, what I would do is defense, receiver. That's what I would do. And that one of the things that's advantageous here, and the Giants have a little bit of a different approach, or should, is that the Jets for once don't have to draft a lineman. They could go out and do some other stuff. At Thomas Rossi, 6427. BT, you're the man. Always got my support. I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much. I feel the support. Thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you, dude. I feel it. I love it. It's awesome. These reflecting lights are driving me nuts here. I can't tell you. It looked different to start the show. Yeah, they're hanging from the ceiling. But again, guys, I live by the mantra, focus on what you can control. I can't control that the things from Amazon didn't get here yet. I can't control certain things. I can, but I can't control the timeline, I think, of certain things. So I'm really excited to see, the backdrop when it's fully popping and there's not, blinding glare. I'm going to start wearing eye black on the show at some point here. That's what I'm going to have to do, Jay. I'm going to wear the eye black. Avery Summit, BT, Dolphins just released Tyreek Hill, coming off an injury, but Jets can use any wide receiver talent alongside Wilson. I mean, yeah, whatever. I mean, Tyreek Hill, I don't know. I mean, he's a disruptive force. He's a pain in the ass. He runs like the wind. Will he still run the way he used to? He'll probably retain most of that speed. I'm not incredibly worried about that. I mean, if you're Tyreek Hill, you probably want to go somewhere you're going to win. I would think right away. Now, I'll tell you what, I also do think that the situation matters. If you want to tell me that rather than spend because again, the Giants only have 2 picks in the first 100, where the Jets have a lot more than that, so they could be more more specific to the needs there based on the numbers. If you want to tell me that John Harbaugh tells Mara and Tish, hey, listen, I can make it work with this guy. He can help neighbors gets back, take the top off, whatever, loosen the box a little bit, help out Jackson. And John Harbaugh's like, yeah, I want Tyreek Hill, and the money's manageable. Sure. I just don't like going to the Jets. You've got to have some stability, and they have none. I mean, and if you're Tyreek Hill, why would you want to go to the Jets? Like in Tyreek Hill's mind, he's thinking one more big payday. This might not be it. It might be like a make good contract. 1 year, I don't know, whatever the guaranteed money is, incentive, 2 years, whatever the third year, team control and just get voided, whatever. I don't even know how these NFL contracts work, and really neither do you. So I'm speaking in nebulous terms. Basically, it's not incredibly burdensome financially, and and he's willing to take it. Sure. But you'd have to think he'd want to go somewhere where the quarterback is good to get him the ball, and the offense is going to be humming so that after the 1 year prove it, his stats are back up, and then he re-enters the free agent market the year after, and there's a greater demand. Keeps his nose clean, he's healthy, he could cut, he could still run by people. I would like if I'm him, that's probably what I would want to do. But I just don't see that for the New York Jets. Why in the world we want to do that? This was something we hit before. Oh, wow. Okay. At Z Williams 2283. The Kareem ABA story has already been called into question on the Mad Dogs show with a guest. Not totally sure it's true. I didn't hear it. I don't know. Yeah, interesting. I'm sure that'll be written about later on. What I'm talking about is I started watching Soul Power on Prime, which is great. Like everything about the ABA is cool. The style, the uniform. I got a couple of throwback ABA shirts. I've just always been really intrigued by the ABA. It's before my time. And it's like the legacy and this lasting impression by plus, not to mention like the Pacers and Denver and other ABA teams that obviously joined the NBA. It's got some roots there. But the story that tweet is, or that text is referring to, is that George Mikan, who was the commissioner of the ABA at that point, when Kareem was coming out, when Lowell Sindor at that point was coming out of UCLA, 69, I think it was, where he was open to going to the ABA, wasn't really committed. It didn't have to be in the NBA. And he basically told the NBA, one chance, one offer, ABA, one chance, one offer. Man of principle, he's not going to sit there and go back and forth and play the game. And the NBA gave their offer. The ABA gave theirs, but they had a check, and they actually had the check. So I didn't hear what was said on Chris's show. I'm sure it's interesting. I don't know if it's true. I'm not refuting it. I just don't know what was said. But I did see on the documentary the actual check made out for $1 million to Lowell Sindor. I really don't know. I'm sure we'll get some news on that a little bit later, but it's absolutely worth a watch. Yeah, and Rick Barry, man, Rick Barry's one tough dude, man. He is a tough guy to get along with. He is just I want to be careful here. I'm not going to call him a jerk. He's just a tough nut to crack. I've interviewed him a couple times. When I was out in San Francisco, obviously played for the Warriors. I sat next to him at the Palace of Auburn Hills one night when I was working in Detroit, and his son, John, was on the Pistons, and he was they had a really good bench, and he got a lot of runs. Pretty good player for the Pistons, and he was at the game, and like he's just a tough dude. He was like right now. I remember he was eating peanuts, and I guess he got a press credential because that's where I was. So I was courtside, and Rick Barry's right next to me, and he's eating these peanuts or walnuts, whatever he's eating. He's just throwing them on the floor. Like, I mean, I know people do that in the stands, like at Yankee. I do it at Yankee games, right? I don't know if you're really supposed to do that where the press is sitting, which that's not why I'm saying he's a tough guy to get along with, but just tough guy to get along with. Let me put it that way. Not Not very congenial, set in his ways, very direct. One thing I do appreciate, he's got no time for bullshit. Like Rick Barry's going to tell you what he's thinking. But boy, you can tell as you watch the documentary on the league, he is a guy who was, as I said, a little tricky to get along with there. What's this here? Loving the logos. We got Timmy Thomas again. Can't wait for the merch. Yep, I appreciate that. Again, whatever. You guys know the deal by now. Whatever. I'm not going to keep apologizing for it. I love the logo. Came out sick. The lights reflecting is what it is. Yeah. And then the merch will be great. So, if you guys are new to the show, I'll run through this really quick here. We have had 2 interviews with potential merchandise companies. Now, I would say as we start to build out the show, again, you go back to December 22nd, which was the first show, I was in my basement and the Wi-Fi was bad. I didn't have the microphone, didn't have the stream cam, all these things I've told you about. But if you're new, I don't want to assume that you know all this, right? And then we built it up. Then I came into my home office, and then I got this microphone. Then I got a stream cam. So obviously the clarity was better. The audio is better. Then I wanted to do something with the background. And, I had the Mattingly jersey. I had the bookshelves. And then I had this installed last week. And now I've got to do something with the lighting. And lighting should be resolved today. I mean, I would imagine the stuff is on the doorstep now. And I'm going to apply it. I can't wait to do it right after the show. So that's coming. So we won't have the glare tomorrow. I think the 2 things that will happen last, and I've gotten questions on the phone and the merch. I think the merch will happen before the phone, I think. I've already told you we've secured the phone line. It's just a much more detailed process. It is. That's something J-Rod and I have to really work through. So we've at least secured a number. It will happen. I don't have a hard date for you. If I had to give you a little neighborhood when I think the merch online store is open, what is it? The 5th, February 16th, March 16th. I would say outside chance St. Patty's Day. I would think that's fairly attainable. That's fairly doable. And, we'll start small, get some hoodies going, get some tees, get some beanies, get some hats. I want to do like the trucker hat, Got to go. And of course, the mugs. So I would think that those will be the first 5 things that'll be out there. And then if there's more demand, whether it's, golf tees or divot replacers or golf balls or, golf shirts or whatever else it might be, maybe even like, I got a couple of you saying like bumper stickers. Who puts bumper stickers on cars? Like bumper I don't even know if I'd waste time on that. I've seen a few of you in the comments like, hey, I put it on my car. I know maybe magnets is the way to go. That's the way to go. Because, you do see like some schools and some club teams on some automobiles. But I feel like bumper stickers were a 1980s thing when everybody drove a dump of a car. Well, at least we kind of did. And everybody on my street did. So you didn't mind putting a bumper sticker on there. You just didn't mind. I remember when I was in college, my first car, oh my God, was a 1985 white Chevy Cavalier, right? And then eventually, my dad always said, "You get scholarship money, we'll get you a car." And eventually, then I got the new car, right? Nothing incredibly fancy, but it was cool. But the first car was an 85 Chevy Cavalier that my dad got from his buddy for like $750 just to kick around. And I mean, I drove this thing into the ground, and it had no style. I'm like, it's 85 Chevy Cavalier. So I'm like, I got to at least pimp this thing up a little bit. So I went, I got these like white plastic things that you put on the windshield wipers. And it didn't impact the ability to clean the windshield. I just thought it looked cool. I don't know what I thought it was building there. Then I tried to put on my own tinted windows. I put them on. It looked awful. Then I had hanging from the rearview mirror, I had like the Nike Just Do It sign and like a baseball and a little baseball bat. And then this part was actually cool. I had a World Series from that one of my former coaches gave me. Ron Hunt, who used to play for the Mets, gave me an 85 World Series ball, the Cardinals, right? And I actually drilled a hole in it and affixed it to the shifter. And when I would shift, reverse, neutral, drive, it was actually a baseball. That was actually, and I brought that one to the new car too, because the new car was a 5-speed. It was awesome. It was actually an official World Series ball. I loved it. That thing looked cool. Everything else, wow. Although I guess back then it was kind of cool. And I remember I had a couple of bumper stickers. I had on I think it was Howard Stern K-Rock. And then I had a sticker, Nike, just do it. They looked like it was like the Pimp Mobile, But back then, even you'd see bumper stickers like my grandparents went to Florida and all they brought me back was this stinking bumper sticker. Or I remember seeing a lot Virginia's for lovers. Or now you certainly see some political stuff, whether for a president or whatever it might be. I don't feel like the bumper sticker market, J-Rod, is anything that would really have stuff flying off the shelves on the BT.
Yeah, I mean,
am I wrong?
Depending on I don't know how many Subarus you got in your audience, maybe that's how many bumper stickers there'd be. But I mean, I don't know how popular they are. I'd say, I've seen also in the comments, those 2 or 3 people who said they wanted the bumper sticker.
Wait, hold on, you cut out. Yeah, you cut out.
Hello.
Yep, you're good.
There we go.
You got comments, guys.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much popularity for bumper stickers as of recent. Like when I was in school, maybe a couple people would do the S on their back window. But yeah, I don't know. For me, even that's kind of a little the orange on your back window. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a little bright. No, I know. I remember too. And you'll see these magnets here and there. You'll see a lot of my son was the student of the month, or my daughter is on the dean's list. I mean, what do we do? Put that on the fridge. We got to put that on the bumper sticker. Come on. So I don't. Yeah, go ahead.
No, well, I guess what's popular now, the one bumper sticker is just student driver, keep back, or student driver, slow up. And you know what? Maybe that one makes sense. But yeah, other than that.
See, I didn't make sure I didn't miss anything here today. Hang on. Yeah, man. I think we got a lot of great content today. What is your overall philosophy on, or at least a reaction to my thoughts here, Jay, about the NBA All-Star Weekend? And before you answer that, I know it's different, and I know it's different. Number one, it's just different, but it's also different, through the eyes of a kid. I remember watching the slam dunk contest as a kid, and then going out in my backyard and trying to replicate Jordan and Dominique, Kenny Smith. I remember Kenny Smith had a dunk where his back would be to the basket. He threw the ball through his legs off the backboard and flushed it. Yeah, and we could actually do that because I had a low hoop in my yard, as I've said a few times. So, that was always fun. But the lack of creativity, and there's only so many dunks that you could do. We're almost desensitized to it.
It's tough.
When did you stop loving the All-Star Weekend? Because I stopped a long time ago, man.
Yeah, I mean, okay, the ones I've watched in my lifetime that were truly interesting, I think obviously the 2016 dunk contest, Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine. I thought that was a great one.
Good dunk.
The 2018 All-Star game where they played up to a certain amount of points rather than a final buzzer beater score. And they had that last possession where the dudes were really getting after it.
Yeah.
I thought that one was great.
Okay.
I think 2020, the Kobe tribute, I thought that game was at least had a little more emotional impact and value. All right. After 2020, done.
Wow.
I don't think I've been intrigued in a single one. I don't know. I mean, I think I've watched a couple of the dunk contests. I watched, the Sabrina Ionescu 3-point thing they did last year with Curry. But yeah, I think, and I'm certainly still obviously intrigued in the game of basketball itself. And I think it's some of the most entertaining basketball I've ever watched in terms of, regular season action. But I just think the All-Star game, once you've kind of lost the players, you've lost the fans too. Even Anthony Edwards is joking. They're like, "Oh, are you going to play hard?" And he goes, "No. What do you think?" And it's I don't even blame him because.
Well, but then he did though. And then when he got the MVP award last night, he said, "Hey, if Wemby set the tone." So but I mean, think about it. A kid who's just barely been here for a minute. It's got to inspire. I know Edwards is young as well, but he's got to Wemby's got to be the one who inspires all the veterans to play with some purpose and some
crazy.
Pride. What if he didn't do it? Then they'd all be out there shooting 50-footers.
Yeah, and
it's just.
And he's kind of the guy who will do it. Wemby is. He has a little bit of Giannis, but I think since he's younger and he had that more of that hype coming into him, he's got a real toughness to him and a real care for the game.
I agree.
And that's what I like about Wemby.
All right, let me get one more thing on so when I'm growing up again, I'm watching, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. To me, the best part, and I love the All-Star game too, because that's when Jordan would unveil his new sneakers, and I just loved everything about the pageantry. My God, phenomenal. But when I was young, I loved, and even as an adult, like I do like when they introduce the players. I don't know if they did it last night where they come out on the stage. Do they still do that?
So apparently
That I
they
didn't
did
see.
something where they had, I don't know if it was AI or not, but they had like everybody wants to rule the world. And then they were like substituting the player's name for the song lyrics. So it'd be like Jaylen Brown.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
Something like that.
By the way, that's a good song. I like everybody wants to rule the good.
So they did so. That's pretty cool. I wish I guess I'll pull up the video, but yeah, they did that. So that was fun. I think the NBA though, comparatively to the 90s, has a lot less. This has always been my argument against LeBron. You know, obviously I'm a big fan of his game, but I think the cultural impact of the modern day of basketball just pales in comparison to the people of the 90s. Like, you don't see someone walking around wearing, oh, I'm wearing Kevin Durant's. Oh, I'm wearing the LeBron ones. It's just
that's
like
interesting.
There's just a lack of cultural significance that the players play in pop culture in our lives, where it's like, okay, LeBron, he's that guy, but I'm not wearing LeBron's. I'm not moved by him fashion wise or style wise, or I don't.
Yep.
You know,
I mean, he finally shaved his head. I mean, I don't know what he was dyeing it with shoe polish. I mean, the other day I actually saw him at his locker combing his hair. And somebody had that on Instagram, like with a big thick brush, like, and he was doing it like so hard, like he was scraping
giving himself rug burn.
What the hell you doing? See, but I don't know if I'd use the word cultural. I'm gonna push back on that. It's an interesting observation, but to me, you think about the cultural impact, and what I think cultural. Like their style, and that's separate. That's part of it. But I think more influence on how people think to an extent. Mm-hmm. And I feel like today's players, whether it's good or bad, I feel like they've got more
political,
more. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Or societal impact.
Yes. So let's separate the two. Now, Lou Alcindor, obviously, players like that, very outspoken for sure. I remember they had a coalition. It was like Lou, it was Muhammad Ali, Bill Russell, several other very prominent African-American athletes that joined together, for their cause, for a great cause. They unified. And, that was also, right around the riots and real political unrest and Dr. King. So the timeline was perfect. And their influence was grand, was, I think, on some level incalculable. I don't really know how you quantify the depth of their impact because it was that great. Now, but I would also say this, like stylistically, sure, Jordan shoes, others, okay. But think about the game itself. I mean, Steph Curry and his shooting prowess.
No,
think of Jokic as a big man, passing prowess. And I know there were other, like Arvydas Sabonis was a great passing big man from back in the day. But like, I feel like today's players have done more to change the game. So there's a lot there, and I think you need to, at least for me, I would designate different areas and apply it to different generations. I think Magic, obviously, the first prototype big point guard at 6'9" kind of spawned that next generation.
Yeah.
And shooters with Steph, and so again, a lot there. No right or wrong answer, but I'm curious. And the other thing too, how do you think? I'm very curious how you answer this. Larry Bird, right? Somebody like Larry Bird. Larry Bird's in the NBA today. What's Larry Bird?
Because I think there are some people who would say he's either Luka Doncic or he's Sam Hauser. It's like there's one of the two. I want to go like a good in between there. I want to go, he's like a 19 point per game guy. Yep. I want to say, listen, he's still a scrappy interior defender. He still got you. Like if you're trying to post him up, he still kind of got you there. But I think there's a lack of quickness on the perimeter that he's going to lose. I think if you got Steph Curry switched onto him in a pick and roll, he could get burnt. But I think, because what's funny is Marcus Smart has more threes all time on the Celtics list.
No, Larry Bird does. Yeah, stop.
Which is so it's like if Larry Bird got the chance to put up the volume that the players in the modern day did, who knows? He could be a 25 point per game guy who's just splashing threes. He's getting 6-7 threes a game, plus 5-6 assists sort of deal. So it's hard to decipher, especially with like a Luka Doncic who's got that slow but methodical game similar to Larry. So I'm going to go like 18, 19 points per game, 5-6 assists, 7 rebounds.
I think he'd be the MVP.
Really?
I really do. Yeah. Now, I don't know that I could say that about all the guys from back in the day, but you see, number one, somebody like Larry. Now, this applies to all the guys back in the day, but somebody like Larry, just how he was wired and how he wanted to compete, he would maximize every ounce of whatever athletic prowess he was given. Because I'm meaning if he's coming up today, he's lifting weights. He's training very differently. Like Larry would just bang back beer and would shoot and would like jog the stairs. He never lifted weights. He didn't do any of that. Yeah. And a lot of guys didn't back then. So he'd be coming up in a different culture. He'd be playing AAU. All right. So he'd have more of I think a little bit more of a city game. I think that would probably, even if he grew up in Indiana on a farm, those players still like the special players still play AAU, right? Now, he might be the only white kid on the team, but Larry would be in the middle of all that, and Larry would be absolutely unstoppable. I think more unstoppable. Number one, he'd shoot more threes. Number two, he'd get to the foul line more because they call more fouls. And if he didn't get to the foul line more, then they called the game the way they do now, him getting his shot off would be easier because you watch him. Just do a little homework for you. I think you laid out pretty well. I'm just giving you I don't think you're completely off base. I just don't agree, but I do like the way you laid it out. Go and watch Larry Bird YouTube highlights later and watch the way this guy had to come off screens and elbows flying and just getting rocked off picks, right? And when I look at Larry Bird, now, obviously, a substandard athlete in terms of quickness and jumps, clearly. But he wasn't 6'5". Larry was 6'9". Some people say they actually think he was 6'10". Like some players have said that. So you have a guy who had an amazing feel for the game. I mean, one of the best passers of all time, one of the best shooters of all time, and really one of the toughest competitors of all time, and a great rebounder, and just not afraid of anything. Like, I think that Larry, with the rules today and the modern training, would be the MVP in the NBA. I really do.
So I'm just seeing some crazy comments here in terms of his averages. D-Rod over here says that he would average 50 points and 20 boards. So, like, what would your kind of thoughts be around statistically where Larry would kind of stack up against the modern play?
No one's averaging 50. He'd probably average. See, he's a very unselfish player too. So he's not going to go gun and hunting shots. That's the other thing. He scored within the framework of the offense. He had McHale, who was one of the best power forwards of all time. Robert Parrish was a really good center. Dennis Johnson needed to get a couple of shots. Same with Danny Ainge. So I would say that Bird in today's NBA would average a triple-double. Let me just start with that. He'd average a triple. That would be easy. So he would say, I would say he'd be about 27, like in his prime, 27, 28, 30 points a game. 11 and a half, 12 rebounds, 10 assists. Like he'd be that 3-4 steals. Oh my God. See, Larry Bird also made all NBA defensive teams. Now, not because, he was 30 feet away from the rim and he was moving his feet and he was hanging with somebody going yo-yo. No, but they didn't really do that anyway, except for maybe Isaiah and a few other guards. But his Chris Mullin had this as well. His anticipation of the passing lanes, like his instincts. I know it's hard to quantify intelligence and the ability to see things a step before others, but Larry had it. I mean, so he's not averaging 50. Larry Bird is a multi-time MVP if he started his career today.
I like the take. You know what? Hey, even more championships for the Celtics. Let's get after it.
Now, I'll tell you a guy. Well, I'll tell you a guy who might, this is going to be interesting, who might actually be a little downgraded in today's NBA.
Who do you think?
Magic.
Why would that be?
Well, think about it. So Magic comes up, wins the championship, Michigan State, beats Bird, obviously, in the 79 NCAA championship, goes to the Lakers. Kareem in the finals, I think he had a migraine. Magic jumps center and put up like 37, 13, whatever he put up. But part of Magic's brilliance was his incredible passing, and that would be the same, right? But also part of his major advantage was that he was just 5 inches taller than every single point guard, every point guard. And Magic was not a good shooter. Now, if I say that about Bird, if Bird had if Bird was doing box jumps like my son does since he was 9, I didn't do once when I was in college. He's been doing them for the last year and a half. Like if Magic had the modern technology he would grow up more, I believe, with a shooting prowess because he'd be shooting more just by nature of coming up. He had a set shot. He wasn't really a good shooter. But I also think that you're kind of inherently who you are. You either have shooting touch or you don't. Not that it can't get incrementally better. I don't think Magic would ever be a great shooter. And I just don't. And if the other aspects of the game are taken away just a little bit because now his height isn't the advantage that it once was, I don't think it's outlandish to say that Bird would be a better player in the modern NBA than Magic would be right now.
Yeah, I think I think, with just the idea that he has that shooting touch that Magic didn't, I think that just easily puts him in an advantage over him in the modern day, because it's like, what Magic would have in the modern day, he'd have quickness, he'd still have a good body for being a point guard, obviously the passing genius, but it would be different when you could, throw a guard on him, throw a shooting guard on him, throw 1 through 3. Anyone would probably be able to guard him.
No doubt about it. All right, man, let's start wrapping this thing down. We go a little 2 hours today. Some good content. Hey, when you're having fun and things are flowing, no need to wrap it up early.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? So, J-Rod, good job today, buddy. Good seeing you. Hopefully you had a good weekend. Did you have a good weekend? Yes or no?
Yeah,
good?
big time.
You know what I mean by good. Good or
chill weekend.
Yeah, chill weekend.
Chill weekend.
I'm still waiting for that good weekend, which, as if you're new to the show, I promised J-Rod, not his first date, because that could be a disaster. Not the second date, because a lot of people have second dates. If J-Rod, when he gets to a third date, dinner on the Unleashed tab here.
Yes,
Dinner,
sir.
I'll hook you up, a little chef action, make you feel like a big shot, bottle of wine, whatever you guys want to drink. I'll take care of you.
I just thought of like, this is totally random, but just a crazy video concept. If you paid for the dinner strictly based off the super chats of the last episode, and then it was like you had to gauge the plate. You either go McDonald's, you either go Burger King, or you go what is it, for Charles.
I like it. I think a lot of people would be. I think you would be eating steak rather than horse meat, because I think a lot of people like you. And I like a lot of people. I think a lot of people like the contrast, the different style and the different energies.
Definitely.
We're very different people in terms of how we do it. I know they love the musical taste. I don't know if you notice, anytime somebody throws a little comment on the YouTube page, like about the music, what do I write? J-Rod production.
Yes, sir.
I write that. You notice that?
Come on. I always throw a little like on it from my personal account. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. You earned it. And J-Rod was telling me that he's got some lyrics written for the song. So that's coming along well. But the point is, if we did do that, like the amount of money or the type of meal that J-Rod could have on his third date would be solely dependent upon the amount of super chat money for that show or for that segment, whatever. I believe people would have your back, and I believe that you'd be going large.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I have faith in the Unleashed fam. Just obviously we don't have to do that. Just a little that's like a funny YouTube video idea.
It is funny. It is funny. All right, man. Let me get out of here, J-Rod. Good stuff today, buddy. I'll hit you guys. I'll hit you after the show. We'll get together on the shorts. He'll do all the post-production stuff. Just a heads up, I'm looking forward to it. I know you guys are as well. Wednesday, 8 p.m., I'm going to jump on Sal's show, on Sal's YouTube show. So that will be Wednesday at 8 live. I know we'll do a lot of Yanks and Mets, get cooking with that. That'll be a ton of fun. Looking forward to it. Also, I don't know if we'll have additional clarity in terms of a date, but stuff that I can't divulge yet because we're not there yet. And I want to be fair to the process. I don't want to just throw things out there that don't happen or aren't fully expected to happen. I can tell you this, BT and Sal Live 2.0 going to happen. I could check. That's going to happen. I can tell you that it's going to be on Long Island. Check. I could tell you, I won't tell you the venue, but I know the venue. Check. So will the show happen again? Yep. Will we be out east? Yep. Do I know where we'll be? Yes. I don't know the date yet. Okay. So I got to stop it with that. But maybe by Wednesday, because we are going back and forth on these dates, me, Sal, and Tooch, maybe we have some more update on that. Hey, appreciate you guys as always dealing with the. I know that reflection's annoying, but appreciate you guys not making a big deal out of it. I can't control it yet. So go out there, like it, subscribe it, get that traction, the hype stuff, get it out, get the word out there. The more you let people know about what we're doing here on BT Unleashed, the more I can do, the more I will incorporate. I'm here every day for you. 10 things we'll start going live. I want to do. a couple of Nick live watch parties. Obviously, I'll do that with the Yankees, maybe occasionally with the Mets here and there as well. Certainly like a big Johnny's road game that I can't get to. So a lot of stuff today, whether it's the Harbaugh draft, and his philosophy, the Jets stuff as well, the NBA issues with Silver, the All-Star weekend, St. John's Providence, the fight. If you just tuned in, hit rewind, go check it out. And I will catch you guys tomorrow at 10 on Unleashed. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me? This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me? This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me? This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me?
with your